from time to time, I will check up on VRChat because I think it's a very interesting platform because of, well, that very fact. A lot of people consider it to be a game, but it's so much more. It really is a platform. I think of it like the Second Life of 2024. You know, back 20 years ago, Second Life was a popular platform. Because, yeah, Second Life was basically a metaverse experience before we really had the metaverse that we have today. But VRChat is really cool despite a lot of its flaws. If you didn't know, it's been around for 10 years now. 2014 is when it launched, and 2017 is when it launched on Steam in early access. Now, that is when it became very popular, even though, especially around that time, most people did not have an Oculus or a VR headset. I still remember how big VRChat was when it first came on the market. I watched like a ton of videos of just people trolling, people messing around in VRChat. All the memes and stuff were just crazy and hilarious, but you know, at the time, even then, I think a lot of people really saw the potential that it had. Now, in case you didn't know, yeah, VRChat is still very much alive today. In fact, it is consistently in the top 100 most played games on Steam. Right now, its overall rank is 51, which is pretty good. Looks like it peaks at around 45,000 concurrent players a day. Now, I would have to imagine that during the COVID times, just like with video games, VRChat probably got a lot more popular, maybe even more popular in terms of the scale compared to video games. Because at the end of the day, VRChat is, you know, more like an experience. And just like with Second Life, I remember like 20 years ago, people would say that apparently they could have like college classes in Second Life. I don't know how true that was. But now with VRChat, especially in COVID, I remember hearing like one or two stories about how there were some schools that actually had classrooms in VRChat. Now, don't quote me on that. I don't have the source of that. That could just be a troll, and God, I would love to have gone to the school that had the funding to give kids VR headsets. That would be pretty cool. But just like with video games, VRChat kind of went downhill in popularity in the past 2 or 3 years now, because obviously people left the house, people went back to work, etc. And while we have seen a sort of big wave of layoffs in the video game world in maybe late 2022 and then throughout 2023, it seems to be overall getting better now. So I say that to say I don't know if this is necessarily related to the whole bounce back after COVID, having players diminish after that. But unfortunately, VRChat has just announced that they are reducing their team size by 30%. Now, funny enough, it's maybe a little vague as far as how many people this actually is. Because, like, I've heard things about how you can work for VRChat, quote unquote, in like these role-playing game worlds. Like, you can pose as, you know, a bartender or an employee of a store in the VRChat or the metaverse, or even like an in-game moderator. And I tried to fact check that. I'm finding conflicting results on if people can actually get paid real money for that. So when these layoffs are announced, I think they're actually talking about legitimate employees like developers of VRChat. Now, that number is also a little vague. It looks like on their LinkedIn, they claim to have between 51 and 200 employees. I don't know, quite a big range there, but yeah, 30% of their workforce, however many people that is getting laid off. Now, they do talk about COVID with this. CEO Graham Gaylor basically said that they went through an excessive hiring process in 2021, and now they are basically doing some restructuring and realizing that they have too many workers. And they also talked about how there was a bit of a delay to sort of build a structured management, and now that they are sort of realigning employees based on their strategy, they are realizing they have too many workers. But yeah, essentially what is discussed is that 2021 was a huge year for VRChat. They were growing like crazy, and then after 2021, that growth sort of stopped. In the overall scope, I mean, I'm sure they still have grown. I would hope they've still grown, but overall, they really overestimated where they would be today in 2024. And they talked about, you know, still being positive and optimistic when looking at the future. Now, do I think, you know, VRChat is now dead? Do I think that this is a sign that they're just going to be completely done and over with in a few years? No. Far from it. Obviously, these companies, they're all going through stuff like this. I'm surprised it took this long. This seems to be a sort of delayed response when compared to other types of companies like this. Like, from what it sounds like, yeah, compared to what their ambitious vision was 3 years ago, they're not growing at basically the same level when compared to that today. But that's to be expected. 2021 was a huge year for companies like this. There's probably next to no entertainment company in terms of tech entertainment where you've got the same or more growth in 2024 as you did in 2020 or 2021. I mean, the CEO is basically openly admitting, hey, we overspent, we overestimated, we sort of made a mistake, and that's kind of it. They're not saying they're going out of business or anything crazy like that. So yeah, I think in the short term, this definitely sucks, obviously. In the long term, though, in the long run, it just doesn't make sense to me that this would be a sign that VRChat is just completely going, bye-bye. No, I think clearly they are just prioritizing what they are putting their money and resources into now. And I'm interested to see going forward, how will this change up their business model? Are they going to be focusing more on monetization? Will there be less updates, that sort of thing? I think overall this company still has a very, very healthy future. Stuff like this happens, and yeah, while 30% of your workforce is a pretty big number, I think now they're really looking at things just realistically. They're seeing how they're doing right now, and now they're comparing that to the future when in 2021, maybe their judgment was a little clouded because at the time, it just seemed like things wouldn't stop in terms of growth. But we all know how that ended. COVID kind of stopped. People went back to work. People left the homes, and the rest is history. So yeah, my view on VRChat is that, yeah, obviously this sucks, but I think they'll bounce back. Does this mean the death of VRChat or the death of any metaverse platforms like VRChat? No, absolutely not. It'll be interesting to see what their future holds, but I definitely don't think that things are all doom and gloom for VRChat.